Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a busy day in the Senate where we are dealing with amendments on the Defense Authorization Bill and some very important amendments about Virginia. And hopefully this will be the vehicle that my Intelligence Authorization Bill that got unanimous support, I'm proud to say, out of the Intelligence Committee will be attached to. But I got four things at the top that I want to talk about, and then I'll be happy to take your questions. First, there was some great news coming from the House of Representatives last night, and that's not a statement I often made, but the entire Virginia delegation stood up and united and defeated an amendment that would have started to micromanage the number of airplanes that go into national versus Dulles versus other regional airports. Now, this would have been bad for Virginia for a variety of reasons if this amendment had passed. National already is the busiest airport in the country. We have more than 1 million, for example, 1 million, busiest airport per capita in the country. We have more than 1 million more travelers at National than we do at Dulles. And Dulles is 14 times bigger than National. So the idea that you would have added, upwards of 14 additional flights in and out would have caused even further delays at National, which has already got some of the worst delays in the whole country. It would have also caused additional burdens for neighborhoods that are affected by the noise. It would have also had a dramatic cutback on the number of international flights that fly out of Dulles, or for that matter, out of BWI. Because if you bring long-haul flights from the West Coast and they deadhead into National, those flights can't continue on an international basis. And it would have dramatically cut back on the flights that would have gone abroad. It would have also, I think, affected a lot of airports around Virginia, Richmond, Norfolk, Roanoke, because the more profitable flights would have been, let's get these West Coast flights that go to National, and if you had to move out other flights to fill those seats, you would have cut off service to some of the surrounding airports in the Commonwealth to force people to go to National as opposed to go to Richmond, Roanoke, or Norfolk. So, as Tim Kaine said, Congress got out of the meddling in airports 50 years ago with the creation of the Washington Airports Authority. We've got this balance. Virginia's invested billions of dollars in bringing Metro to Dulles, and this kind of micromanaging effort, I'm glad to see it was defeated in the House. We've still got a battle in the Senate, but I'm feeling very good about that. Secondly, passports. Last Friday, I took a visit to the Washington Passport Office because I think what we've seen is anyone trying to get a passport as we reopen post-COVID, it's been a disaster. People waiting literally hours and hours online to even get an appointment to go get your passport approved. In the past, you could normally send in for a passport, expect to get it in 8 to 12 weeks. If you were really expedited, you could pay some additional money, get it in 2 to 4 weeks. All of those timelines have dramatically been extended. And let me say, the passport workers are working their tail off. I mean, they are working during the day, they're working at night, they're coming in on weekends. But with these delays, it really is a result of a perfect storm. During COVID, the couple of years that we had COVID, people didn't travel internationally. And families didn't go ahead and get a new passport for their new child. So you've got this pent-up demand all surging at once this summer. To give you an example, the Passport Office nationally used to process new and replacement passports about 22 million a year. It dropped to 11 million during COVID. This year, it will go up to over 25 million. So a 15 to 20% increase over the previous highs. That has just kind of collapsed the system. Now, my office, and you shouldn't have to go to your senator to get a passport, but my office has got a 95% success rate on helping Virginians get their passports. And so my advice is threefold. One, if you're planning international travel, especially if it's going to be still this summer and you don't have your passports, it's going to be really tough to get it done because we've reached the peak of the season, but there's still, we had a record number of folks, for example, the other day at the Washington Passport Office. Two, we need to get back to a state where those timelines of 10 to 12 weeks for traditional process, 2 to 4 weeks for expedited, will come back to reality. That will hit probably into this year, beginning of next. But it's not going to happen overnight. And in the interim, what's been happening is you have to call to literally get an appointment. And we have pushed the passport office. They've made some progress that the call centers need to be able to surge. We can't hire more people overnight in the passport office because they have to have security clearances. But the actual surge ability of the call centers, after my meeting, they did extend call center hours on Saturday and a little bit later into the evening, but I want that call center to dramatically surge. You don't have to get a classification number or a classified security clearance to be at the call center. That center needs to step up. And then finally, there was an online renewal process that the passport agency tried as a temporary system. They're going to go back, fix the bugs on that online starting the beginning of the calendar year. So relief is on the way. In the short term, we have given a little bit more relief in terms of the call center so you can get your appointment scheduled, because what's happening is, whereas you used to be able to walk in without an appointment, now people are literally being forced to travel 2 or 3 time zones to get an emergency passport at the last minute, sending huge costs to a family, particularly if they, not only if they need to want to travel internationally, but if they need to see a loved one that may be dying in another country. So we've still got some challenge here. Please, if you're traveling, make sure you check your passports. The number of people who end up calling our office, 2 days before they're leaving, realizing they haven't checked their passport. We got a 95% hit rate, but we can't absorb literally all of the calls alone. We've seen 51% of our casework now just be about passports. So I think we made some progress, but please, we need the engagement of Virginians to make sure this happens. Third issue, very briefly, all Democrats put forward a proposal at the national level in terms of Freedom to Vote Act. This does a lot of the things that we've already done in Virginia, which I think we need to maintain. I can't believe there are people in the General Assembly who want to roll back voting rights, but this national bill would create a national holiday on election day, the way most nation states have. It would have automatic voter registration. It would have same-day registration. It would allow and maintain early voting. I'm old enough and been doing this long enough where I remember when both political parties encouraged easier voting. We clearly have the claims of voter frauds have been virtually debunked everywhere. You do need to have some identification process, but this freedom to vote thing would extend what we've done in Virginia to the nation. We got 51. I'm not sure we're going to find all the additional Republican supporters, but in many ways we've modeled after some of the good work we've done in Virginia in this national proposed legislation. Finally, an issue that's particularly applicable to Southwest Virginia. We have had black lung benefits in existence for a long time. But unfortunately, and this is a story that I've been working on for a couple of years, widows of miners who have died from black lung are many times finding it very difficult to get their benefits. So what we have put in place is legislation, Tim Kaine and a variety of us, we've introduced it a couple times, would change the presumption to presume, if you hit certain indices, that a miner died from black lung, so that again, that widow could get the benefits that frankly she's deserved. And unfortunately, we're seeing a dramatic uptick in black lung amongst much younger miners. So this is not simply a problem looking back retroactively to many of our mine workers as the number of mines have gone down. It is a current problem as well, unfortunately, as we've seen the incidence of black lung go up. So I really hope this is not going to cost a lot of money. It basically guarantees widows their benefits that they have earned. They're oftentimes husbands who are miners, in a sense, gave their life because they got black lung in helping to power our country. It is, I think, our obligation to honor those commitments, and we need to, frankly, get rid of a lot of the legal and hurdles that some of the insurance companies are putting in place to stop these individuals from getting this benefit they deserve. We've got that legislation as well going forward. With that, why don't I turn it over to Laura, I think, who will start taking the questions.
Senator, our first question will be Mitchell Miller with WTOP.
Hi, Senator. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Mitchell.
I wanted to follow up again on Reagan National Airport. As you know, Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock is co-sponsoring legislation. He, of course, is representative of Georgia, which is the home of Delta Airlines. Where do you see this going forward? Do you think it's dead on arrival in the Senate, or do you think there's going to be some back and forth? What are your thoughts, again, about as this moves forward? I know you're going to fight it.
Mitchell, let me be clear. Congress micromanaging flights into our national capital area, we shouldn't do it. We've seen in the past, and when I was first in the Senate, we literally held up the FAA bill for 4 years before we reached a compromise. So I'm not going to make individualistic threats, but I can tell you Tim Kaine is all in on this, Ben Cardin, Chris Van Hollen, we as a delegation. This would hurt not only Dulles, it would hurt BWI, it would slow down the number of international flights, it would affect other airports around Virginia as the airlines would force people into Reagan rather into other service around the Commonwealth. And I was pleasantly surprised. I thought one of the airlines that had been one of our supporters, American, had gone a little wobbly, which was very disappointing. But the fact that this amendment was defeated by pretty good margin, 229 to 205, I think, is really reinforces our case. I'm going to bring that case to Senator Cantwell, who's chairman of the Commerce Committee. There are a series of other issues that are holding up that markup, not just the slots issue. Frankly, one of the options right now, because on both pilot training hours and on the flights in and out, the House bill's pretty good, and there's a lot of other good things. We need an FAA bill. We need to have more air traffic controllers. We need to have better oversight on drones. It might be a good idea to simply take up the House bill and move forward on that. But I can assure you on this whole debate, I feel much better today than I did yesterday at this time.
Hello, Senator. I had a quick question about I guess you're going to take up the NDAA in the Senate next week.
No, we're working on NDAA right now. Matter of fact, I have to go up and vote on an amendment once we're done with this call. So we are actively engaged on that bill. Okay.
I'm just wondering if some of the things that came over from the House, such as the amendment about not paying for service women who need to travel for an abortion and things like that, are those going to be real roadblocks to reconciliation and to getting a bill done? Short
answer is yes. I mean, the idea that we're going to restrict women service members' access to health care is a bridge too far. I mean, I firmly support a woman's right to choose. I firmly support a woman's right to get access to health care. And, candidly, we're going to lose women volunteers. If you say suddenly I'm stationed at a base where abortion rights have been completely taken away, are we going to still have the number of women volunteering for the armed services that we have right now? I mean, we're already in huge problems in terms of recruitment. We've got, a large number of Americans who just frankly aren't physically fit enough. We've seen a dramatic growth in women playing critically important roles. The idea that we're going to suddenly restrict their rights, we've already seen one senator on his own hold up all of the military promotions in our country, something that was never politicized. That weakens our national security. So I know all the Democrats, but frankly, some of the Republicans as well, think that some of these provisions in the House bill are just plain untenable.
Senator, our next question is Mike Gooding with 13 News Now.
Hello, Senator.
Hey, Mike.
So, because I only ask you questions of the utmost national security importance, I got a two-parter for you. Right. First, could you weigh in quickly about you and Kaine's skirmish over Barbieheimer? And then secondly, more serious note, could you talk about Kaine's amendment yesterday to stop presidents from pulling the U.S. out of NATO?
Yeah, listen, I think Tim's amendment yesterday was spot on. We had a NATO that prior to Biden going into office was frankly on its last legs. And we have seen NATO grow stronger. We've seen the granting of NATO membership to Finland, and with the recent summit, Sweden hopefully joining as well. That has stood tall against Russian aggression, and we need to make sure that on a going forward basis, some future administration doesn't willy-nilly take the United States out of NATO. Our country is stronger being in NATO, and Mike, as you know, we have a huge NATO presence in Norfolk. In my last trip to Hampton Roads, I met with some of the leadership of NATO ACT based in Norfolk. There's a General Levine, who's a very, very articulate leader of that presence. So Tim Kaine's, I was proud to support it. It was the absolute right thing to do. It got a good majority. So kudos to him, and proud to support. On the Barbie Oppenheimer mixed melange that's coming forward, if there is a recent controversy on that, the only controversy I heard was actually that in the Barbie movie there was a screwy map that made some countries upset, and frankly, Barbie's already been banned in Vietnam. In terms of the other current flap, I'm going to do since I don't have any idea about it, I'm just going to politically punt and say I'm in support of both the Barbie film and the Oppenheimer film.
Senator, our next question will be Tyler Englander with WRIC.
Hey, Senator, just a quick question about the online passport renewal system. The State Department had originally said that would be ready sometime in the end of this year. I thought I heard you say that it was going to be sometime next year. Do you have a firm date from
Tyler,
the State Department on when that?
Yeah, Tyler, let me correct. It was what they told me was it was supposed to be ready at the very beginning of next year. So the end of this year, beginning of next. I don't think there's been any change in that. And I know there were some problems on the online renewal process to start with, but they did tell me that they had a 90% customer satisfaction. So that's good data. If they can work out some of those kinks, doing this online makes an enormous amount of sense. The amount of other documents that we can do online. Now, again, this will be for renewal. You're still going to have to go to get that original passport and prove your bona fides that you are an American citizenship. One of the most valuable documents in the world is an American passport. So we need to make sure we maintain the security around that. But the online renewal process should be open into this year, very beginning of next. There's been no pushback on that, and I'm committed to making sure I stay on the passport agency to get it done. Now, remember, this perfect storm was because of the decrease after COVID, but it was also due to the fact that there was a hiring freeze put in place in the last administration. And I do think it's more than a little ironic that some of the very congressmen who were, shouting to the rafters, we need to kick the passport agency in the tail to move faster because they got constituents who are upset, are the very same ones who supported a hiring freeze. You can't have it both ways.
Senator, our next question is Amy Knowles with the Virginia Dogwood.
Hey, Amy.
Hey, Senator Warner, thanks for taking our questions. Back to school is right around the corner, but in Virginia, we're still dealing with this teacher shortage. What's happening on a federal level, or what would you suggest to help fill those slots?
Well, remember, there was a recent JLARC study that showed that, unfortunately, Virginia, with its standards of quality model, is underfunding public education compared to a whole host of other states around the country. I remember when I was governor, Virginia was ranked the best state in the country for public education from preschool all the way through graduate school because we invested in education. And that wasn't some third party that didn't have any bona fides. That was by Education Week. I don't want to micromanage what's going on in Richmond right now, but if we've got a $5 to $6 billion surplus, most of that from one-time money that came from the federal government from COVID relief, my goodness, I can't think of a better use than both bonuses for teachers to stay in teaching. We lose about 40% of our teachers in their first 5 years as they move to other professions. But also, as we compete against teachers from around the country, using some of those funds for a one-time signing bonus. would make a lot of sense. Now, obviously, the legislators got to work that out, but I know folks are always willing to say we want to invest in education. Well, we've got huge surpluses. If we don't invest now, when will we?
Senator, our final question is Joe Thomas with WCHV. Joe? Senator, that's all the questions we have.
All right. Well, he's got tough questions at the end. But listen, thanks everybody. Again, I hope you can stay cool. I wonder, back on the political standpoint, it would be hard pressed to have anybody in elective office these days deny that our climate is changing and deny that we're going through some of the hottest times in our life. I think that's taking a toll. There are literally nation states that are virtually becoming inhabitable. And the scary thing is, unless we do something about it, this may be the last cool summer we have in terms of what the future may hold. But stay cool and let's get this defense bill done. Thanks.